Welcome to Story District Presents, a podcast for people who love live storytelling. I'm Amy Sedman, your host, and the director of Story District, a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. that's been dedicated to teaching and showcasing the art of storytelling since 1997. In each episode, we do two things. We bring you a story from one of our shows, and then we meet the storyteller, and we find out more about what it takes to tell a great story. This season, we're bringing you stories of the 7 deadly sins. And today we bring you a story by Phill Branch about the sin of sloth. Phill performed this story at a show called Not Funny, stories about things that are so bad you just have to laugh. Here's Phill.
So recently I had this amazing opportunity to be part of a writing fellowship and attend a week-long writing retreat out in Bel Air, California. It was an LGBTQ, don't forget the Q, it's really important. LGBTQ writing retreat at the university, the American Jewish University. Makes sense. So I get all the way out there and I pop open the trunk to take my things out and I hear someone screaming, "Levan, Levan." And of course I don't answer because I don't speak French. And it kept getting louder and louder and I turn around and I realized that there are 3 writers behind me, and they're waving and smiling, and they're like, "How's it going, Levan?" And it was really weird because my name is Phill. Just one syllable, no la. And as it turns out, Levan was one of the other 3 black guys at the retreat. He was, about 6'4", dark chocolate skin, beautiful guy, and about 55, 60 years old. So I can see how they made that mistake. So the retreat was off to a good start. So the next morning, I'm in the cafeteria with my tray, and I'm faced with this dilemma that has plagued me since junior high school. Where do I sit? Now, no offense to anyone here, but sometimes large groups of white people make me nervous. And so one half of the cafeteria is closed. There are tables stacked up and chairs stacked, and there's some caution tape. And then the other side has about 8 tables filled with writers talking and getting to know each other. So of course, I push through the caution tape and I go sit by myself, and as I'm making my way towards an empty table with no chairs, I move quickly. I don't look at anyone because I didn't want anyone to do anything foolish like offer me a seat at their table. And then I hear, "Hey, Phill, we can make room for you." And I'm like, fuck. So I turn, and it's Heather, this woman who I had met briefly the night before, this sort of aging ex-hippie chick. If you could imagine B. Arthur dressed in head-to-toe Urban Outfitters. So I plaster on a smile, and I walk over, and the table's already full, and they're gonna have to squeeze in to make room for me, which is even better. And as soon as my butt hit the chair, Heather looks at me and says, "Do you think they'll have fried chicken and waffles tomorrow?" I was so confused. I had just met Heather, and we hadn't had any sort of poultry talk whatsoever. I didn't even have eggs on my plate. Now, in moments like this, I sometimes wonder if I've gone into a trance and become that sassy, pure sugarcane lady from the Popeyes commercial and started reciting lines like, "Come get you some sweet tea," or something like that. But truthfully, I have these experiences all the time where I have to deflect random chicken talk or exaggerated neck movements or pop locking. Yeah, it's not okay to just walk up to me and and do that. It's uncomfortable. Co-workers and colleagues are worse when it comes to that sort of thing because strangers aren't quite sure if you might slap the shit out of them. But the people you work with think you're a different kind of black because you laugh at their jokes and you talk with them about Downton Abbey. A few years ago back at work, I was walking towards the printer. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think I was walking like black or anything. I think it was just a regular old office stroll down the hallway. And as I passed my colleague Lori's office, she screams my name, and I step back, and she's like, "Monday's Martin Luther King Day." And I'm like, I'm getting Black holiday shout-outs now? Like, what the fuck? So what do you say to that? And I'm like, yeah, power, So my earliest memory of what I call unsolicited blackness came in the 80s. I was in high school, minding my business. There was a song on the radio, you may remember, some of you old enough, called Supersonic. It was this, hot song, JJ Fad, and I'm at the mall in Jersey, Livingston Mall, in the food court, minding my business, and this white girl hops in my face, and there's a part of the song where it's just gibberish. And she hops in my face, and she's just like, hamalama, dumalama, simalama, hamalama, hamalama, samalama, gamala. Yeah, that's it. And she like poses. And I stood there for about 27 seconds being rapped at for absolutely no reason. Like, it was some sort of 80s suburban version of getting served. I didn't know what to do. Was I supposed to like rap back at her? Was it a battle? I didn't know. I just wanted to eat my Whopper and go to the fucking Gap. So anyway, so I'm at this retreat, and Heather is like still staring at me, waiting for a response to her little chicken inquiry. And everyone else at the table is like staring down at their little sad bowls of oatmeal and fruit. Like, dude, she's on her own. So I calmly think to myself, if I strangle her, then I'm the angry black guy for the rest of the week. So I just say, why did you ask me about fried chicken? And the other writers at the table are like, don't answer, don't answer that. And Heather leans back like I asked the stupidest question on earth and says, well, you like fried chicken, don't you? Now, I'm not sure, but I think I blacked out for like 2 seconds. But when I came to, it was like white rage. Like, all the writers were on Heather's ass. Like, that is so fucking rude. Why are you asking him about chicken? It's not cool. And they were like in her face. And she seemed really surprised by their response. And she just says, what's the big deal? I'm just talking. Italians eat spaghetti. Mexicans eat tacos. And she just points to me like, like, what is going on with her? So then I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, I don't want to go to jail. But, she probably thinks I've already been. So I dig deep, and I'm still trying to take the high road, and I say, don't you think there's a problem with you asking me about chicken? I'm not angry, but don't you see the problem? So then one of the white girls at the table who was defending me got mad at me. That's bullshit. You are angry. And then they got on my ass about not being angry enough. Like, they were like, be a black man, tell her how you feel. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was at the mall again being rapped at. It's like I had no intentions of having the Million Man March when I came down to have breakfast. A brother can't even lay his burdens down when he eats granola. And here's the thing. I love fried chicken, right? So if there was like a list like of things I love, my mom, maybe number 2, my mother's fried chicken, right? But just don't walk up to me and offer me a recipe. Like, just don't ask for what spices I use. Just don't walk up randomly. And this is why I sat in the empty part of the cafeteria in the first place. So, and here's a secret, everybody. Here's why all the black people you work with disappear at lunchtime at work. They don't want to be bothered. It's too much work sometimes to just be sitting there. And after about 10 minutes of Heather getting railed on for being possibly racist, and then me for not responding to racism appropriately, Heather finally says, look, I didn't mean anything, you know, maybe I was being racist. We're all a little bit racist sometimes, so we're cool? And I'm like, I think that was an apology. I don't know, but I'm famished. I haven't eaten breakfast. We've been sitting there for 30 minutes. So she extends her hands to me. I go to shake her hand. She leans in and she smiles and she says, and I'll make sure not to ask you about watermelon. Good night. Thank you.
Now, I'm curious what happened after this incident.
I've already been called the wrong name. I'm asked about fried chicken. And I'm sitting there and this happens. And there was one other person at the table, a writer, an author who's well known in some circles named Samuel Delaney. And he's Black, but I didn't know how he identified. I didn't know him well. And he's like this legend. And he sat pretty much silently at the table. And he was one of the retreat sort of consultants. And he pulled me aside afterwards and just said, you handled that so well. He said, I'm so proud that you just asked the question, why? He said, because what happens is people tend to do these things and get away with it because we're uncomfortable. You don't want to stir. He said, or we come back with complete anger and then you can't have a conversation. And he said, just asking her to answer the question why made her so uncomfortable. She couldn't, which is why she kept going with the other things. He said, I know that's not the kind of work you want to do, but you handled it well. So I thought that was a really good moment to have that connection with him because I was uncertain if he thought maybe why didn't I just leave it alone so that was good. And then what also happened is that the other people who were there became super liberal to prove that they weren't like her, which also is something too, and which I just wanted to be. We're in Bel Air, in this beautiful place, and everyone's either proving to me sort of that they are kind of racist or the rest are like, oh, I'm so not racist. Look at all my Black friends on Facebook. And it's just, all of that is exhausting.
Yeah.
And they created a diversity on the spot. The word got out about the chicken thing. And they created a diversity panel at the retreat to discuss diversity issues. And it's just, seriously. I mean, and I appreciated the response, because they knew something was wrong. But again, we're already at something for marginalized communities. And now we have to create another subset within that because someone thought it was okay to just ask me about chicken. And it's just like, I just wanted to come and relax and be for a while, which is the thing. You just can't, as evidenced by the people calling the police all the time for random, ordinary things on Black people. You can't just be, which is really the issue.
You mentioned that when you told this story, you looked out and it was predominantly white audience. How does that affect the way you tell it?
I make a conscious choice not to perform Blackness for audiences. So a lot of people who go into those spaces sort of perform whatever that is, whatever community they're from. Sort of as a representative, I tend not to do that. I tend just to tell the story straight. And then just have to they have to deal with what I'm saying and I have to deal with the response. And so far, no one's ever left the theater while I'm talking. That's not my goal. But I want to be honest in those ways and accept that some people won't get it or like it. So I do some explaining about things because people may not understand. But I just kind of go, I know about you. You should know about me. I shouldn't have to explain everything. And I just stand there. You can laugh, cry or what, but it has to be honest to me. And it's not my job to paint a picture always of who I am. It's just, this is my experience. I think it's fairly universal, but if not, I'm okay with sort of how we're connecting right now on stage because that moment speaks to something.
Yeah. Have you done the same story in front of a predominantly Black audience?
I only did one show with that particular story, but we did a workshop at the Anacostia Library for a predominantly Black audience. And they had a much different reaction in terms of they were quiet largely and just kind of nodding their heads because they've lived that experience. And, so they came to me later and they were like one-upping. Well, let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what happened to me. So it becomes more of a like, yeah, I know about that thing, So with an audience that is predominantly Black, you have to approach it differently, kind of from like, okay, we've been down this road, so let's talk. It becomes a different kind of vibe.
You do a great job of making it funny, finding the funny in a difficult situation. And I think that's definitely a powerful tool for storytellers. Do you have any thoughts about how you approached it?
I like to laugh, but I try really hard not to make myself the butt of the joke, like in these instances, or to downplay the seriousness, right, of what something may be, and that's really sometimes hard to do to get to that space, because I was irritated at the table, but I also was able to call my Black friends and go, "I got asked about chicken," and they're laughing because it's ridiculous. But you're also just like, come on, at the same time. So it's trying to find a way to kind of communicate that in a story where people can get it, and know that it's not all jokes. And I think when you're talking about an audience, they can't be sort of beaten over the head with something. So they're laughing and they're also going, I do this. I might have done this. Or, oh, that is why my Black friend never is around when we go to Panera. Do you know what I'm saying? For lunch. You know what I'm saying? Like, where did he go to? Like,
there's got to be other reasons not to go to Panera.
Right.
No,
There's
I'm
a
not
few.
anti-Panera.
Right. So, yeah.
So, yeah, but I think it's a great example of exactly what we strive to do with Story District stories. And I think we want people to tackle complex issues, difficult moments. But we do have a belief that if you want to be heard, it helps to find moments of humor and have enough emotional distance from it to be able to tell the story. But I think it's super effective because we heard it. I mean, I heard it. It's not just a laugh riot. It's very funny, but I think you come away as a listener really thinking about how it felt to be in your shoes.
And I think this is the only time I've performed this story. I've told this story a million times to friends, but it's the only time I've performed this story. When I watch the video of it, I see my frustration when I watch it. Like, I compare it to other videos where I'm performing, and my body language in this is just like, I'm irritated as I'm telling the story, and I'm not laughing. I'm up there doing what I need to do, but watching it, I realized that it was still in my bones, but not enough for me to be angry. But just it's there because it's a lived experience.
Yeah. So SLOTH is the reluctance to work or make an effort, and it seemed like a really good fit because in part that's what's going on. There's an ignorance, but there's a sloth to ignorance. It's like not bothering to understand better, not bothering to educate yourself. So that's why we picked your story for SLOTH.
I mean, I had never thought about it that way, but it does make sense. A lot of people act like sort of these moments are sort of like it could have been, it couldn't have been avoided, because people are just raised how they're raised or whatever it is. And I disagree with that. I think I often say we're around each other. People watch television, they read books, they know people are different and also the same. We know this, but because it's not impacting them, they can just go about life and just kind of not do any work. And it is lazy, so I do see it as sloth.
It's a good fit. Did you end up getting anything out of the retreat that you came for?
I did. The retreat was 40. It's an emerging writers retreat by a pretty prestigious writing organization. And I got to meet some really important writers. And I think it was a reminder for me sort of like to think about audience and think about community in the way that I present my work, and how I identify, because even in the group of LGBTQ writers, there are different identities. And just a reminder for me that, it's just all complex and you just have to figure out how to be in the midst of all this kind of labeling of who people are because we were all so different. And I think it was important for me to kind of remember that I am not the Black gay voice because what does that even mean,
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
It's been lovely to have this
been
conversation.
Great. Thank you.
that's it for this episode of Story District Presents. We're so glad you're listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, and most importantly, keep listening. To get tickets to a show, sign up for a class, pitch a story of your own, or hire our consulting team, visit storydistrict.org. This show is made possible in part with funding from the D.C. Commission on the Arts and Humanities. Our show is produced by Lizzie Peabody, Ronald Young Jr., Ilana Nevins, Nick Hill, Tim St. Clair, and Jackson Bierfeldt. And special thanks to Phill Branch for joining us in the studio. That's Phill with 2 L's, by the way, in case you want to Google him, which I recommend that you do, or follow him on social media. I'm Amy Sedman, and this is Story District Presents. We'll see you next time. Hey, I want you to feel taken care of, that you have your needs met. And a pita cracker might be one of your needs. I don't know. Actually, let me turn this up. Yeah, baby. All of it. All of it. God, I wish I was shorter.